Hey, good evening, everybody. Looking forward to being here tonight. Sorry, we're just about a minute or two late. It's been kind of a crazy afternoon for me. But looking forward to our class today. Hopefully, everything went well with the homework last night. Yesterday, we talked about strings. Is that right? Yeah, we talked about strings and creating string literals and so hopefully that all went well. I know our class ended a little bit early yesterday, which hopefully gave you some extra time before meeting with your project manager. So as far as housekeeping items go, remember that the last day of class this week is on Thursday, and make sure that you are there because we are going to be creating our first table view application, okay? And we'll be using a lot of the stuff that we've been learning up to this point. And pretty much every app that you've ever used, unless it's a game, contains some sort of table view. So that'll be kind of a really good culmination of everything that we've learned, and it'll be fun to put that app together. So make sure that you're there on Thursday. And if you are interested in the full-time course, be sure to go online and sign up. And I know I've touched on it a few times, but I'd like to touch on it again for those of you who may have missed it. Really, what is the Lambda School advantage? Because there are a lot of different boot camps out there. What makes Lambda great? There are a few things. Number one is the instructors. The lead instructor for the iOS course at Lambda School is Andrew Madsen, who is one of the best developers here in the state of Utah. And that's actually saying a lot. I know maybe some of you don't really know much about Utah, but Utah is a humongous tech hub. We call it the Silicon Slopes, and we have tons of tech companies. And so by saying that he's one of the best iOS developers in the state that actually means a lot. So he was actually, when I went to a code camp, he was my lead instructor and taught me a ton. So that's one of the huge advantages of Lambda School is the instructors are amazing. Number two, and I've talked about this, but the ability to pay your tuition after you actually land a job, right? So you can take this 6-month course and not have to pay a dime until you have a job as a developer, as you know, in the tech scene, making $50,000 or more per year. So that's huge, right? Because a lot of these code camps, they're great, but you have to go in and you have to drop, $10, $15, $20,000 right there before you even get started, before you even see if you're successful and actually good at becoming a developer. It's a lot riskier. Whereas Lambda, you get a chance to actually learn the content and land a job before you have to start paying it back, right? And another advantage, when I went to a code camp, I had to drop everything that I was doing, and I had to go to a campus every day from 9 to 5, and it was impossible for me to really do anything else, and required a lot of public transportation and whatnot. Whereas Lambda School is all online. So you can do it from home, you can do it in your PJs. So that's another great advantage of Lambda School. So make sure that if this is something that you really want to be doing, which, I mean, if you're here and you've made it through this up to this point in the course, it sounds like it's probably something you're pretty interested in. Go ahead and sign up online for the full-time course for Lambda, okay? Let's see. I think that's all of the announcements I have for today. So let's go ahead and let's hop into it. Again, today we're going to be talking about collections. So up to this point, we've been dealing with properties that usually contain single objects in them, right? So if I have a number, it contains one number. If I have a string, it contains a name. So we've been dealing with singularity objects up to this point. So today we're going to talk about collections, which are properties that store multiple objects. Okay. And the two different collections that we're going to be talking about today are what are called arrays and dictionaries. Okay, and we'll talk a lot about them and the differences and how to use them. But like always, let's go ahead and get started by opening up Xcode. And I'm going to share my screen with you here. Okay. And for those of you who don't like to see my face while we're teaching, I'm just going to turn off my video so that you can't see me. And I'm going to turn off my notifications so they don't get in the way. Get rid of this and this. Oh, actually, I want to leave this open. Yeah, let's leave this open. Bring it over here. Okay, sorry about that. My desktop is pretty messy. So let's go ahead and we're going to be going into Xcode. And if you already have it open and it doesn't have the dialog box with the templates, you can go to File, New, and then we're going to be working in a playground today. So I'll bring this over here. And we are not going to be starting with any sort of templates. So let's go ahead and hit next here. And I'm going to call this collections. And let's go ahead and create this. Okay. And like always, one day I'll learn to change my theme before I actually start the presentation. But let's go ahead and set that to presentation large so you can all see. Okay, so today we're talking about collections, more specifically arrays and dictionaries. Okay, so let's say up to this point, like I said, we've talked about singular objects or singular properties, right? So if we have a name of type string equals Johnny, right? But to create a collection of names or of anything else, we need to use a collection. And so let me show you how we can create a collection. And so we're going to go ahead and we'll get started with arrays. Now let's talk about how to create what's called an array literal. So we talked about string literals yesterday. So array literal is going to be as so. So let's go ahead and I'm going to create a variable and let's call this numbers, okay? And we're going to say that my numbers collection is going to be of type int, okay? And so remember, this is how we can declare a property if it's singular, right? With the colon and then with the type. In order to create or to specify the type of an array, we surround this by brackets, okay? So these brackets here, these mean that it's an array. And then what's inside the array? Integers, okay? So we can go ahead and say variable numbers equals, and then I'm going to open up my array here, and we'll just put in a couple numbers here, 1, 2, and 3. Let's go ahead and print out our numbers. Okay. And still running. Let me stop this. I don't know why it's getting caught up on this. It's not like this is a big piece of code. And come on. Okay, I might have to restart Xcode here. It's annoying. But hopefully with Xcode 10, things will get better. Okay. So I'll go ahead and open up our file here. And I need to open up my notes as well. All right, so you can see now that we have printed out our numbers array, and you can see that it contains 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so as with other properties that we've created before, for the most part, the compiler is smart enough to infer the type based on our array, right? So if I got rid of this explicit type of type int, right, it would still know that this is an array of integers, okay? And if I option click on my property, I can see that it is indeed numbers is an array of integers, okay? So type inference does work with these collections or with these arrays, right? But it's always good to practice giving an explicit type to these, right? So this is how we do it. Numbers of type int, an array of integers is equal to 1, 2, and 3, okay? So let's go ahead and let's create another array here. And let's call this our names array. Let names array equal, and then we can say Dustin, Billy, Andrew, okay? And again, this is also going to infer our type because it only contains strings. And we can see if we option click on it that our names array is an array of strings, okay? And if I wanted to give this if I wanted to explicitly state the type, I can go ahead and say it's an array of type string, okay? So let's do this one more time. Let's go ahead and let's create an array here of our favorite foods, okay? So everyone take 30 seconds here to create an array of your favorite foods. Okay, just take 30 seconds to do so. Okay, so you should have been able to create that array, but our favorite foods is going to be an array of type string, right? And I'm going to say that my favorite foods, nothing really healthy here, but I really love tacos, love pizza, I love hamburgers, ice cream, something called Hawaiian haystacks, which is, I guess, supposedly a Utah thing. Anyway, it's just rice with like chicken and cream of chicken sauce all over it, and you usually put like pineapple and stuff on it. Anyway, really good. So this is we're going to say that this is our favorite foods array, okay? So what happens if we try to add, let's say I really love the number 3 at McDonald's, okay? So I'm just going to put 3 here. Well, let's see what happens. This is going to say cannot convert value of type int to expected element type string, okay? So an important thing to remember with arrays is that everything within the array needs to be of the same type, right? So we know that this array is of type string, and so if I try to put an integer in there, then it's going to, the compiler is going to get mad at me and say, hey, I'm expecting you to only give me strings. You're giving me an integer. Try again, right? Okay, so now that we've got our array, let's talk about how we can access specific values within an array, right? Because right now, if I print out favorite foods, well, that's going to print out everything, right? But what if I wanted to print out just my favorite food, right? The first item in my array. Well, this is something called subscript syntax, okay? And subscript syntax allows us to access an item at a certain index, okay? And so when I say index is essentially a placeholder or a number of where a certain item is within a collection, okay? And something to remember with arrays is that they are 0 indexed, okay? So arrays are 0 indexed. And what that means is that elements in our array actually start at index 0, okay? So a lot of times when we're counting, we usually start with 1, okay? But with arrays, we start at 0, okay? So tacos is my index 0, is at index 0. Pizza is at index 1. Hamburgers is at index 2, okay? And so even though there are 5 elements in this array, the highest index is 4, right? And so that's something that's sometimes hard to remember. Is you're like, oh, well, there are 5 elements in the array. I want to access what's at index 5. Okay, and if you try to do that, your app's probably going to crash because it's going to say, hey, your index is out of range. Okay, so remember, arrays are 0 indexed. Okay, so let's go ahead and how can I access elements out of this array? Well, let's go ahead and let's create a variable and let's say let favorite food, you can give it kind of a silly name, let absolute favoritist food, and this is going to be of type string, right? Because we're grabbing it out of an array of strings. I'll say it is equal to, and then this is where the subscript syntax comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call my favorite foods array, and then to access elements in said array, you create a bracket here, and then you're going to put in the index number of the item that you want, okay? And we're going to assume that my array here is, that it's in order, right? It's an ordered list, and the first item in my array is my absolute favorite food, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say, I want my absolute favoritist food to be equal to the first element, or this 0 index, in my favorite foods array, okay? So let's go ahead and print out absolute favoritist food. And we'll see that it is tacos, okay? So this is how we can access elements in an array, okay? So we know that 0 is going to be equal to tacos. If I change this to 1, it's going to be equal to pizza. Hamburger would be equal to 2, right? So on and so forth, okay? So that is what we call subscript syntax, okay? So the question is, how can we modify an array, right? How do I add elements to an array besides just coming in here and saying, hey, steak, right? How can I add elements to an array later on, okay? So let's go ahead and I'm going to say, let's create a property here and say let new favorite food equal, well, actually, no, let's do this. Before we talked about adding an item to an array, how do we modify items that are already in an array, right? So if I want tacos to be more specific, how do I modify what's at index 0, okay? So what I can do here is I'm going to say let new favoritist food, wow, it's hard to spell words that don't exist. Let new favoritist food equal, and let's say steak tacos, okay? Not just tacos, but I really love steak tacos, okay? So the way that I can insert this into my array and replace it, right, is I'm going to call my favorite foods array, and I'm going to say index 0 of my favorite foods array is going to be equal to my new favoritist food, okay? And it's a let, meaning I can't modify it, so I need to change favorite foods to a variable, right? So let's go ahead and let's print out favorite foods before we modify it so that we can see this in action. And then I'm going to print out favorite foods again. And let's see the difference, okay? So here we set my favorite foods index 0 to my new favoritist food here, right? And I didn't need to create this. I could have said this is equal to steak tacos, right? And that would have done the same thing, right? So you can store it in a property, or you can just put a string literal there to modify it, okay? So, so now that we know how to modify items that are already in an array, how can we add an item to an array, right? Maybe I want to have tacos and I want to add steak as well, okay? So let's go ahead and let's create another example here. I comment this out in case we need to come back to it. And let's just interrupt so you guys can't see it. Whoa, that's weird. I don't know what just happened here. Oh, Xcode just crashed. I did something bad. Let's try this again. Okay. Alrighty, so how can we insert items into an array? Okay, well, let's go ahead and I'm going to create a new array here, and let's call it my zoo array, because I own a zoo and it's full of lots of different animals, okay? So I currently have a giraffe, I've got a monkey, and I've got a lion, okay? And then as the weeks go by, I decide and purchase a rhino, okay? So let's go ahead and let's say let new animal equal rhino, okay? So how can we insert this into our array? Well, if we go ahead and we call our zoo array, and using dot notation, when I do a dot after my array, it's going to give me a list of all of the different things that I can do to my array. And these are what are called methods, and methods are built in by Apple, and they're super nice. We talked about one yesterday when we talked about uppercasing or lowercasing our string. Well, arrays also have different functions that are built into them. And so if I call an array and use dot syntax here, or dot notation, that will allow me to access these methods that are available for arrays, okay? And so one of these is called insert, okay? And so this is a method that's already built in that allows us to insert elements into an array, okay? And so if I start typing insert, you'll see this insert new element at int, right? Okay, and so what this is saying is that insert your new element, which has to be of type string, and then at is asking what index do I want to insert it at, okay? So let's go ahead and let's insert our new animal here, and we'll insert it at index 1. Okay, well, let's go ahead and print out our zoo array, and I'm going to print this twice so we can see the difference. Okay, so initially we had a giraffe, monkey, and a lion, but then we inserted our rhino at index 1, which we know is going to be the second element. Well, if we look here, we've got giraffe, we've got rhino, and then monkey and lion. Okay, so that is how we can insert an item into an array at a specific place, if we care. Okay, but what if we don't care at what index, right? Well, one thing that we could do is if I know how many items are in my array, I could say at index 3, okay? And then you'll see we've got giraffe, monkey, lion, and rhino. Okay, well, the problem with that would be, what if I don't know how many items are in my zoo array, and I put like 4 or 5 or something in here? Well, you're going to see that we got a fatal error. Array index is out of range. It's going to say, hey, you're inserting something at index 4, but you don't even have that many items within your array, right? So how can we insert an item at the very end of our array? Well, we have another nifty function. I'm going to insert this back at 1, okay? Another nifty function. So if I type in my zoo array here, we have something that's called append, okay? And append, as you can see here, it says adds a new element at the end of an array, okay? So I can go ahead and do append, and let's create a let new animal to equal penguin, okay? And so I can call my zoo array with the append method, and then I want to append my new animal too here. Okay, and let's go ahead and print out our zoo array. And you'll see that it added penguin to the very end. Okay, so append is really nice because we don't have to keep track of how many elements are within our array. Whereas with insert, it's always possible to insert at an index that doesn't exist. Append, we'll just go to the very end of the array and add it and tack it on to the end of the array, okay? So let's talk about how we can remove items from an array, okay? So let's say that I've got a pets array, variable pets array, and we're going to say I have a dog, I've got a cat, I've got a bird, I've got a snake. Snake here, okay? But let's say that I went ahead and I gave my snake away. Okay, my wife didn't like the snake, and so I want to get rid of the snake from my array. Well, let's go ahead and we want to get the index of my snake, right? So let's say let index equal my pets array dot, and then we're going to say index. So show me the index of my snake, right? So I want to get the index of wherever my snake is in my array. So maybe I don't know where it is. And this will be more useful if you had an array full of like 100 things, right? You may not know the exact index of snake. And so this index function will sort of act as a way to search through your array for anything that's called snake and then return the index of that, okay? So that's why I have the let index equal pets array index of snake, okay? So now I can call my pets array, and there's another cool method here called remove. And you can see that it says remove at, and so it's looking for an index, okay? And so then I can go ahead and remove at index, the index that we created here, okay? So let's go ahead and I'm gonna print out my pets array, and print out pets array. Okay, and we're going to see an error here in just a sec. Okay, so we get an error here that says value of optional type array.index is not unwrapped. Did you mean to use exclamation point or question mark? Okay, so we talked about optionals a couple of days ago. And the reason that our index here is an optional index is because it is possible. What if I said bear here, okay? Well, there's no bear in my array. So if I assign an index, if I'm assigning to a property, to my index property, looking for the index of bear, well, there might not be a bear in my array, okay? And so that's why index is optional, and it makes sure, it keeps us safe because it makes sure that there actually is an element inside of our array that is that says bear, or that says cat or dog, right? And so what I can do in this case, and let's talk about unwrapping these, right, is I'm going to say if let index equals pets array index of snake, and then let's go ahead and put these inside of my unwrapped index. It should work, right? Okay, great. So remember we talked about unwrapping optionals using an if let, right? And so I'm saying if there is something in the index, something in my array that is called snake, assign that to my index property, okay? And then because I've unwrapped this optional, this index optional, because I've unwrapped it, I can use it here in my print state, in my remove statement right here, right? I can remove an index because I know the index exists, okay? So another thing that we could have done here is we could have said, get rid of this. Another way to unwrap optionals, remember, is using a guard statement, okay? So I could have put guard let index equal pets array dot index of snake else return, which just means return means don't worry about it. Don't run the rest of my code, right? Okay, and or else, oh, I guess because I'm outside of a function, I can't use return. I hardly ever use guardlets if I'm not in a function, okay? So let's just do guard, well, no, let's just stick with the if let, okay? I don't want to get too far into the mechanics of guard statements, okay? So we can see here that because we've unwrapped our index, we can remove that item from our array, okay? So a couple of other cool methods that are built in for us is if we go back here and just get rid of this. Let's go ahead and say pets array, remove. Okay, you can see that we actually have a couple of methods in here that are built in, right? So we can remove the last item from an array. And so let's print out pets array. And you'll see that that removed snake, okay? I can also remove the first element in an array. So remove first. And let's print out our pets array. So we should see dog gone. So all we have are cat and bird. And then we can even do this. We can remove all, okay? And so this removes everything from our array. So if I print out pets array, it's going to be an empty array here, okay? So all of these different methods are built in for us that will allow us to modify and remove elements from our array, okay? Does anyone have any questions thus far? I know that the unwrapping was probably something new. Actually, I haven't seen any questions. I haven't even seen anything in the chat. You guys can hear me, right? Okay. That would have bbeen horrible if I had been talking this whole time. I guess I assume Boomer would have said something if you guys couldn't hear me. Okay, so someone just asked, is the method custom function? Okay, so methods, and we're going to talk about creating our own data types tomorrow that have methods in them. But yes, method is another name for a function that's inside of a class, okay? And so because all of these methods here are inside of array classes, or an array type, okay? And those are things that Apple has already built in for us, okay? So we call those methods. Alrighty. So what if we want to check to see if an array contains a certain value, okay? So if I get rid of all of this, I can do pets array dot contains, and I want to know if this contains dog, okay? Well, if you look over here, we can see that it is true, that it does indeed contain the word dog, okay? So we can use this contains method to make sure an element is inside of an array. And if we know that for sure, then when we created that index here, right, let index equal, and then we want to do pets array dot index of dog, okay? Then what we can do is we can actually force unwrap that because we know that dog exists. But I'm not even going to talk more about that because this is called a bang operator and it allows you to force unwrap an optional. That's a bad thing to do because if you force unwrap something and there's nothing inside of it, then your app is going to crash, right? But just that's how the contains works, okay? So let's go ahead and let's take a 2-minute timeout to practice some of what we learned, okay? So going back up to your favorite foods here, I want you to do a few things with your favorite foods array, okay, to kind of review what we talked about. So I want you to, first of all, append an item to your array, okay? I want you to replace item at index 0 I want you to insert a new item at index, we'll say 2. I don't know how many elements you guys have in your arrays. And then I want you to remove remove an item at index, and then I want you to put in like your favorite food here, right? So in my example, I wanted to remove like a pet. I wanted to remove at index dog. We'll go ahead and remove at index, for me, it would be like hamburgers or something, okay? So go ahead and take 3 minutes to modify your array doing these different things. So appending, replacing, inserting, and removing an item. And you'll have until 6:40 to do so. Alrighty, let's go ahead and walk through it, okay? So I've got my favorite foods array, okay? And first we want to append an item to our array. So let's go ahead and take favorite foods, and I'm going to append a new element, and let's call this, oh, what's another one of my favorite foods? Pasta, okay? So let's go ahead and print out favorite foods. And we should see that pasta is there at the end, okay? So now we want to replace an item at index 0. Okay, well, we did that previously, but let's do it again. So I'm going to use my favorite foods array. And we're going to say favorite foods, index 0 is going to be 0, is going to be equal to fish tacos. Okay, and let's print out favorite foods here. And you'll see that our steak tacos is now fish tacos. Okay, insert a new item at index 2. Well, let's go ahead and do favorite foods dot insert. And we're going to say Twinkies. Not really, but That's all that I could think of right now. So let's insert this at index 2 and print out our favorite foods. So we should see in Twinkies as the third element, which fish tacos, pizza, Twinkies, okay? And we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna remove Twinkies from my favorite foods because that's not true, right? So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna say let index equal favorite foods dot index of Twinkies, okay? And remember, if I want to use this index in any meaningful way, I need to unwrap it because it's going to be return an optional, right? And so if that's the case, then I can do favorite foods dot remove at my index. And then let's go ahead and print out favorite foods. And you'll see that Twinkies is no longer in my array, okay? Any questions up to this point? Were you guys all able to get those? Okay, very cool. Well, let's go ahead and talk about, before we move on to dictionaries, we need to talk about loops and looping through items in an array, okay? So we've talked a lot about for loops. Well, we can actually use for loops on arrays. So let me get rid of all of this stuff and go up to my favorite foods. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say for favorite food in my favorite foods array, print my favorite, let's do this, one of my favorite foods is, okay, and then using string interpolation, I'm going to insert my favorite food here, okay? So let's go ahead and see what that returns, okay? One of my favorite foods is tacos. One of my favorite foods is pizza. One of my favorite foods is hamburgers, right? So we can use these for loops to loop through elements that are inside of an array, okay? So you'll use that a lot more. When you're using for loops, this will probably be your most common use case, is looping through items in an array. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do this. I'm gonna write a function. Let me show this to you guys, okay? So with our knowledge of these for loops that we've done so many times, we're gonna write a function that takes an array of strings along with a string and returns an integer indicating the number of times the passed in string appears in the array, okay? So I guess in layman's terms, I want you to create a function that takes in, let's just say for names, for example, okay? So you're gonna have a parameter where you're gonna pass in a name, and then you're going to have an array of names, and I want you to create a function that will return the count of the number of times that name appears in the array, okay? And let's go ahead and do this one together because we're running pretty low on time, okay? So let's go ahead and create a function, and I'm gonna call this count, and then this is, our first parameter is gonna be a name, right, of type string in a names array, which is also going to be an array of strings here, okay? So first off, we need to create a property that's going to be our count of names and say that this is equal to 0, okay? And then for, just to make it not confusing, I'm going to make up my own property name here. So I'm going to say for nombre in my names array, if my name that I've passed in is equal to nombre, count of, we'll take our count of names plus equals 1. Okay, hopefully I set that up right. I probably should have tested that before I wrote it. So let's go ahead and let's try calling our function. First, I need to create an array. Let names equal Johnny, Johnny, Ellie, and Oliver. Okay, and so let's see how many times the name Johnny appears in my names array, and hope that this works. Count of names in, and then I want to print out count of names. What am I missing? Is this broken? Before I was interrupted. 2 times. So it went through it twice, but I don't know. Oh, what am I looking at? It's right here in this very corner, 2. Okay, so Johnny appears twice in my array. Okay, alrighty. So let's go ahead and let's talk about dictionaries. Okay, so dictionaries are another way that we can store multiple properties. And the nice thing about dictionaries is you can think of them like an actual dictionary, right? If you were to open up a dictionary, you know that you have the word and then you have the definition, okay? And so dictionaries in programming are similar in the sense that you have key value pairs, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and let's create a dictionary here. And I'm going to call this dictionary ages by name. Okay, I want this dictionary to store the name of my friends and the age of each of them. Okay, so let's do ages by name equals. And dictionaries are similar in that they are wrapped in brackets, but instead of just doing elements like this, Linda, right? We need to create a key and then a value for each of those, okay? So we're gonna say here that was is going to be my key, right? And so remember a dictionary, when I say key, the key is the word, the definition is the value, right? And so in my dictionary here, my name is going to be the key and the value is going to be the age, right? So we're gonna say that was is 27, okay? We'll say that Steve Jobs is 63. And say Grace Hopper is 112. Okay, so something silly like that, right? So this is how we create a dictionary. And so we've got our key, which are names, and then we've got our values, which are ages, okay? And so let's see what kind of type the compiler inferred from this, right? So if I option click on this, it's going to say, okay, you have a dictionary of string, a dictionary that has the key is of type string and the value is of type int. Okay, so it inferred that correctly for us. So the other way that we can explicitly state this is by doing our colon here, and we're going to say string and int, right? Meaning that my keys are strings, my values are integers, okay? So that's how we can explicitly declare the type. Now, how can we access elements within our dictionary? Well, what we can do here is I can say, let Steve Wozniak age of type int be equal to, and then I'm going to call my ages by name dictionary, and I want it to search using the key, right? So in order to access the value inside of a dictionary, we search it by its key. Just like you would if I were to say, what's the definition of par, right? You'd have to, I'm giving you the key and I'm asking you to return the value, right? So I can say, I have this property here, Steve Wozniak's age is equal to the value of ages by name with using the key was, right? Don't know if I explained that right, but let's go ahead and let's print out. I mean, I explained it right, but I don't know if that made sense. So let's go ahead and let's print out Steve Wozniak age and see what we get. Stop. Manually run. Okay. Please don't freeze on me. Okay. Okay, sorry about that, guys. No, it keeps freezing. Oh, it's because it's our age is not unwrapped, right? Because I'm searching with the key was, but what if was doesn't exist, right? So in order to unwrap that, I need to do an if let, and then we'll move this up into inside of the braces, right? So print out Steve Wozniak age. We'll run that, and Xcode is still being silly. Come on. Sorry, guys. Let's run this. Okay, looks like some of you have gotten it to work. My Xcode's being kind of lame right now. Let me force quit it and try to open it again. Perfect. Okay, so we printed out Steve Wozniak's age, which was 27. Okay, well, so if we look at our dictionary, we're searching by was, his value is equal to 27. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and do another example here. And let's take a look at, I'm going to create another dictionary here. And it's going to be a list of where all of my friends live, okay? So let's create this variable friends states, okay? So we're going to say that my friend Bob lives in Utah, okay? So Bob being the key, Utah being the value. Jeremy lives in California. And let's say Heidi lives in Texas, okay? So I've got my dictionary, which this dictionary is going to be string, right? Because we've got the key is a string and the value is a string. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Well, let's say if let Bob home. I want to see where Bob lives, so I need to look in my dictionary and remember that when I'm trying to access items out of my dictionary, it could be optional, right? Because I'm searching with a key that may or may not exist. Okay, so I'm going to do if let Bob home equals, and I'm going to call my friends state dictionary, and searching with the key Bob, print out Bob lives in Bob home. Okay, Bob lives in Bob home. Bob lives in Bob home. Okay, so I run this code, and we see that Bob lives in Utah. And so remember, I had to use an if let here because it's possible that I search, what if I search Mick here? Well, if I run the code, Mick doesn't exist, right? So if I search something that isn't included in our dictionary, I can throw that into an else and say print what is a Bob, right? Or something silly like that. So you can run that and what is a bob, right? If I search something that didn't exist, or if it's nil, right? Because the value at Mick doesn't exist, so it's nil, it's going to print out what is a bob, right? Okay, so let's do this. I want to create a function called email address that takes a person's name as a string and returns their email address as a string, okay? And then we're going to store that inside of a dictionary. Okay, so let's say here that I've got func, and we're going to call this email address, and we are going to be passing in a name, right? So email address for name is going to be of type string. Well, first off, we need to create a dictionary. So I'm going to say variable email dictionary, and it's going to hold a string is equal to an empty dictionary. Okay, so we're going to start our dictionary off empty, and this is how you create an empty dictionary. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's say let email address be equal to our name parameter that we pass in plus at, and using string concatenation that we learned yesterday, I want to take the name and add at gmail.com to the end of it, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and take our email dictionary that's empty, and we are going to store our name and our email address inside of it, okay? And so let's go ahead and print out our email dictionary. I should probably call the function first. So email address for Johnny. Okay, let's play that. And so you can see that our dictionary stored my name, the name that we pass in as the key, and the email address as the value inside of my dictionary. Okay? So how can we insert items into a dictionary? And project managers, I have to apologize. I'm probably going to be a little bit over time today. Okay? So let's talk about how to insert items into a dictionary. Insert items. Okay, so I'm going to say I've got different animal types. Okay, and this is going to be a dictionary of string. And this is going to be, I'm going to have a cat, and its animal type is a feline. I'm going to have a lion, whose animal type is also going to be a feline. I've got a dog, whose animal type is going to be a canine. And let's say I have a frog, whose animal type is an amphibian. Okay, so here's my dictionary of animal types. Well, if I want to add something to my dictionary, I can do so by calling the name of my dictionary and creating a new key for it. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to create a new key that's called gorilla, and then I'm going to say the value of said key is primate. Okay, so you'll see here that if we print out animal types, and let's print it out again so that we can see how it changed. Well, if I hit play here, you can see that we've now added gorilla primate to our dictionary. Okay, and something important to note with arrays and dictionaries is that arrays are ordered. Okay, and because they're ordered, we can use specific indexes to access elements. Okay, dictionaries are not ordered, meaning that if you were to print out a dictionary, it's possible that the elements in the dictionary print in a different order, right? And so that's why we have to use keys to access the elements within a dictionary, okay? And the same thing, we can't insert at a specific index. Rather, we need to create a new key and give a value to that key, okay? So this only works if you create a new key, right? So it's going to go up to animal types and it's going to say, okay, does any key exist already that says gorilla? No, it does not. Well, I'm going to go ahead and add that as a new value in my dictionary, okay? But if we do something that does already exist in our dictionary, so if I said cat, well, that's going to go through the dictionary and it's going to say, okay, so I'm looking for the key cat. Oh, here it is. And the value for that should actually be primate. Okay, so then if we run our code here, you'll see that cat is now a primate instead of a feline. Okay, so that's how we can add elements to a dictionary as well as modify elements to a dictionary. Is if we can modify by using a key that already exists, or we can add by using a new key. Okay. So how can we remove items from an array? Well, what we can do is we can do so by using the key, okay? So I'm going to take my animal types and using the key here, lion, I'm going to set that equal to nil, okay? And by setting that to nil, I'm saying, hey, just remove lion from my dictionary because the value is equal to nil, so it doesn't matter what the key is, okay? So I'm going to print out animal types and run that, and then we'll see that lion has been removed, okay? Another way that we can remove is actually a method that's already built in for us. We can remove at, or let's do remove value, right? Remove value for key, and I'm going to remove at key frog, okay? Let's print out animal types. We should see that our frog is no longer here as well, okay? So we talked about inserting items into an array, how to modify, or sorry, not array, dictionary, how to insert an item into a dictionary by creating a new key and adding a value. And then we can remove an element from a dictionary by setting the value to a specific key to nil, or using this built-in method here, remove value for a key. Okay, so then the question is, when should we use arrays and when should we use dictionaries? Well, that's a good question that really depends on a given context, right? If you need to create a collection that you want it to be ordered, if you want it to be ordered elements, then you're going to be using an array, right? Because an array is ordered elements and you can access items in an array using an index, okay? If the order of said elements is not important or doesn't matter, then you would want to use then you can use a dictionary, right? And if you want to be able to have keys and values, you know, for example, if we wanted to store our friend's name and their age, then we'd use a dictionary, right? Because if we wanted to create we couldn't create an array that stores their name and their age, right? Because one is a string and one is a type int. So we need to use a dictionary that can hold a string and can hold an integer, okay? So hopefully that makes sense as far as how and when to use each of these different collections. Tomorrow, we are going to be talking about custom data types, okay? And so just like we have arrays and dictionaries and strings and ints, those are all different types. So tomorrow we're going to talk about how to create our own types. Okay, so if I wanted to create something of type car or of type computer or of type phone, these are all different types, and we're going to learn how to create custom data types that we can use inside of our programs that we create, right? So that's all that we have today. I'm going to go ahead and post the link to your homework so you can get more practice with dictionaries and arrays. Okay, so did collections today. And your homework tonight is called Swift Collections. You're going to be creating a project called Thesaurus. Okay, so you're going to be creating a thesaurus. So let me share this link with you here in the chat. Okay, so that is your homework for tonight. And then please remember to fill out your daily stand-ups as well. And I seem to have misplaced the link for this stand-up, but I think I posted it yesterday. So let me repost it for you here.
I got it. I put it in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Boomer. Okay, so homework and daily stand-up, and we will plan on seeing you guys tomorrow. All right, best of luck on your homework. Thanks, guys.